Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Professor Leon Blevins of El Paso Community College Television. This is Valentines Day, a Wednesday, the 14th of February of 2018. It's a sad day in the life of the United States of America. As I was getting dressed to come to this interview with Charlie Minn, a documentary filmmaker about mass killings, I turned on the television, or it was on as I walked into the living room, and there was a story there about a shooting, a mass shooting at a high school in Florida, Broward County, Florida. We have friends in that county. And it caused visions in my mind to go back to some other days where I interviewed Charlie Minn about massacres. The first time I interviewed Charlie, and Charlie, welcome to the program.
Leon, it's an honor to be with you, and you're a good man.
Another sad day for us, because Charlie got interested as a New Yorker years ago. Now he's an El Pasoan, but he got interested in a mass killing of 5 people at a bowling alley in 1990 in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So he came down and he investigated that, and he did a documentary film on it. And since then, he's done several documentary films. And I've interviewed him. I checked my records, 2010 up to today. This is about 10 times of talking to Charlie Minn. And it's not just so he can promote his films, but so you, the audience, also can find out more about what's going on in our society and our culture, and especially on this subject. Charlie has 2 new films coming out this month and next month. One is called 49 Pulses, and it's about a mass shooting of killing of 49 people, primarily in a restaurant and a bar that favored homosexuals. And this man goes in and he shoots and kills 49 people. And that was June 12th, 2016. And then here's another one, A Nightmare in Las Vegas. Charlie's just completed a film called This. On October the 1st, 2017, a coward in Las Vegas committed the worst mass shooting in American history. Prior to that, this was the worst, and then it became this in a very short time. Charlie, let's talk about this. Why is this going on? Why are so many people killing so many other people?
If I knew Leon, then I can retire and be a multimillionaire by selling a book about it. We're in trouble. We're trending in the wrong direction. You mentioned a Florida high school, I believe it was today.
Yes.
14 victims was the last we saw. I don't know if they're all dead, but they said 14 victims. It could be more.
Yeah.
And that happened right down the road from the Pulse nightclub shooting that you were referring to earlier, June 12, 2016, and that's my next film that opens this Friday at Bassett, and people can log on to 49pulses.com for more information.
It was on the news a while ago that this was the 12th mass shooting at a school since January 1st of this year. We're just now to the middle of February.
Feels like more, Leon, to be honest. You know what it really feels like right now here in our country? This feels like Juarez 8 years ago, when you wake up and you go 6 today, 7 tomorrow, right? It was just like right around 8 murders a day. And like I said, we're trending in the wrong direction. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know what exactly is our plan moving forward from our government. It doesn't seem like anything's being done. It's a whole bunch of rhetoric and propaganda.
You're talking about politicians, the community leaders.
Yeah, the same old cliches. If Sandy Hook didn't do it, 21st graders shot in the head in 2012 in Connecticut. If that didn't do it, then I don't think anything will. Like in Mexico, I did a movie about the 49 babies that were killed in a fire in Hermosillo in 2009. If that didn't do it, then what will, in terms of the injustice in Mexico and people rising up and saying we've had it?
Do people just become numb to this? So much of it's happening. We in society are just becoming numb to it. It was another one. There's another one.
Right. I think we have that what's that word?
Desensitization.
I'm desensitized, exactly. And I think in this world today that we live in, everyone literally lives by the phone. We literally live on our phone, texting, information. I'm guilty of it at times. I try not to be. And I think that distracts us from really important matters that are directly in front of us, but we're distracted by social media. So perhaps that's why we don't act upon it. But regardless of the politics, something has to be done about all these mass shootings.
Well, all of these involve individuals. It's not just mass. There are many individuals, families affected. It's a ripple effect. You've seen how some of these family members have been affected. Let me ask you, how have you been affected by reporting on these, so many of these? How have you been changed?
Well, Leon, that's a question I get often, and I feel awkward answering it because it's not about me. I didn't get shot.
Right.
And I hope people don't think of me when shootings occur. Right. It's about the victims.
Right.
I studied victimization, and I don't mention the killer's name in my movies. I started doing that a couple of movies ago, and I hope the media will follow my lead because the killer always tends to get all the ink, and that's what the killers want.
Right.
And the media, for the most part, is shamelessly feeding it to them, and I think that creates copycats. So if the media follows my lead by omitting the killer's name altogether, I think there'd be less murders in our country moving forward because killers would now know going in that their name will never be mentioned again.
Well, I noticed that Anderson Cooper on CNN has begun to do this. A lot of times he will not mention the name
I think he copied me, Leon.
perpetrators. Okay.
But case in point, the Rolling Stone magazine put the Boston Marathon bomber on their cover.
Oh, I know.
And during the Orlando standoff, the Pulse nightclub shooting, which took over 3 hours for police to take down the shooter mentioned the Boston Marathon bomber during those 3 hours while he was terrorizing everybody. So he mentioned the Boston Marathon bomber and talked about how he looked up to him. So if you put two and two together, you could almost blame Rolling Stone magazine in some way, possibly, for the Orlando shooting. Because if they hadn't glorified the Boston Marathon bomber, maybe the Orlando shooter wouldn't have looked up to him and committed the Orlando tragedy.
Well, after Columbine happened in Colorado, a number of young people saw that and were copycats. They thought those guys were great. They were
That's
heroes.
exactly what I mean. I mean, it creates copycats. I mean, people say, whoa, this guy shot 50 people. Let me be the guy to shoot 51 next time. Or they try to supersede the most recent one.
Well, at some of these showings that you have of your films, and I've been there where you've had discussions going on, do you have any feeling about public policy proposals that people are willing to put up with, such as cutting down on assault rifle ownership by the general civilian population, or on multiple magazines available for quick change, and even including the killing of more people? What do you sense from your audiences when they're bringing these subjects up?
Well, Leon, I try my best not to politicize these things, even though it's sometimes it's unavoidable. I try to always keep it on a humanity level, and because once you get into politics, I've always said politics separates people. Humanity brings people together, and I always try to remind people this is about humanity. We're all God's children. We all hurt. We all bleed, but to answer your question, I mean, I just think it's a debate that you can never win if you're, if you want to get rid of guns, and that's that whole debate about bump stocks like we saw in Las Vegas, and all the magazines you're talking about, and all the high-powered ammo that you feel is. I mean, what's the point of that? Why do people in our country who are not in the military own those types of guns? So I just think that's a lost argument to this point. The NRA is so powerful that it's always money. It's always money over humanity. And we had a 17-month-old baby shot in the back of the head a couple of weeks ago in Missouri. And you know what the NRA would say about that? They would say, had the baby been armed, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, Leon, we're really trending in the wrong direction. Anyone who doesn't see that is lying to themselves. It's not a matter of if, but when, where, and how many.
Well, I remember when University Medical Center was known as Thomason Hospital, before you came on our scene, and I would see doctors on talking about what was beginning to happen in Juarez with mass shooting weapons. And the doctors were saying, you know, it used to be that we'd have a gunshot, it'd be 1 or 2 bullets that went through somebody and we could save them. But now they're being riddled with bullets. There's no way that we can save many of these people. And so the magnitude of the death quotient has gone up because of the magnitude of the weaponry that we have on the streets now. Juarez, Mexico, and the United States.
And where did Juarez get their weapons from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they come from the United States.
We love our guns. Yeah. We love our guns. We love our drugs. There's a lot to be shameful about being an American, just as much there's a lot to be proud about. Obviously, we're not a perfect country, but this violence has to be corrected at some point. I just don't know when. It may not be during your lifetime or my lifetime. I have no idea. I don't know what to do about
I've seen at some point when you've had openings here and you've had some of the people involved in those situations that you do the film about, and I see you, it's almost as if you become a counselor, that you comfort them and work with them. And I know in some cases you've helped fund some of their projects and their needs from some of the proceeds from your film, and I commend you for that. Not all film producers will do that. Do you sense that sometimes, that people are leaning on you because you are getting their message out, and it's like the Las Cruces massacre, it's still unsolved?
That's right, and the 28-year anniversary was February 10th of this year. Mm-hmm. Still unsolved. It's ridiculous. Let me get right to the point that it hasn't been solved yet. But to go back to your original question, are people leaning on me? I don't know. That's a difficult question. That's certainly a big responsibility for me to accept, for people to be leaning on me and depending on me. I mean, I'm a filmmaker.
You're a storyteller. You're a storyteller.
Yeah, I want to inform, educate, and raise awareness for social change. Mm-hmm. And I can't do it alone. I can't put on a cape and fly over a city and solve everyone's problems in that city. I need help. All I do as a filmmaker is put that information out there, and then from there, when the audience takes it in, it's on them on what to do about it, whether that activates them to do something, or whether just to file and forget.
Now, you jumped into these 2 projects very quickly, right? Right after you heard about Pulse in Orlando, you made your way there quickly, made contacts, and started getting some video.
Yeah, that was about 8 months, actually. I said to myself, for the first 6 months, I didn't want to touch it because it was just too early. So it happened on June 12th of 2016. So it wasn't until actually the following April of 2017 that I pursued that project. I was busy with other projects anyway. Mm-hmm. So when I contacted people for the first time in April of 2017, I was rather surprised how forthcoming they were, and they wanted their stories told. So when Vegas occurred, I said to myself, well, maybe I shouldn't wait this time, get right in there. So a month or 2 after Vegas, I started contacting people, and a lot of people wanted to come forward and tell their stories. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand the counter argument. My critics will tell me, well, aren't you making these films too soon? If the victims want their stories told, we should respect that. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who were victimized. They're the ones who were shot, not the people criticizing the timing of the film. It really, the victims should be the bosses here.
Now, your films are opening here in El Paso, one this month.
Friday, the 23rd of February, and that's going to be at Bassett. That's the Pulse film in Orlando. Okay. And then March 23rd is the Vegas film, and that's A Nightmare in Las Vegas, March 23rd. So a month apart, 4 weeks to the day, because February is a shorter month. Right. So these projects are coming up pretty quickly.
And they can check the times with the theaters themselves, Bassett itself.
Yeah, I mean, the websites are pretty easy, 49pulses.com, and then nightmareinlasvegas.com.
Okay. Is that all the information you want to put out there for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, everything's on the website.
You're easy to find on going just Charlie Minn, go Google Charlie Minn, and they can see images of all of your films that you've done.
Yes.
Which one was the hardest film to do?
Wow, you got me. That came out of nowhere.
Logistically, emotionally, which one of these was the hardest?
I've done 25 films, so I'd have to almost go down the list.
Flashbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I almost can't answer that right now. You got me there, Lee.
Was one easier to do than the others?
Maybe the sports films, because it's sports.
Oh, that's something else.
Yeah, Eastwood, 1976, winning the state basketball title.
Yeah,
Last high school to do that in El Paso.
Yeah, I interviewed you about those two sports.
Yeah,
So.
Socorro won the 2009 baseball state title. I did something on Coronado Franklin, Las Cruces, Mayfield football rivalry. Sports brings people together. Sports makes people smile, unless your team loses.
Yeah.
But it brings people together. It's fun, and it balances my life because every day I'm thinking about murder. I know that sounds wicked, but
Right.
I mean that's what I study is victims
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
and crime.
Perhaps this one about Las Vegas was harder for you to do because of the number of deaths and the massive numbers of people that were injured, wounded, and they have lifetime wounds.
Over 800 people were injured, Leon.
Yeah.
I think over 500 shot. A lot of people were injured trying to get away. They were stepped on, trampled over,
Right.
cuts, bruises, scrapes. The one thing people don't talk about the Vegas shooting is how there was so much heroism and humanity, and that to me is so important when talking about victims. Is that again, because the media is so infatuated with the killer, we forget the stories of people taking a bullet for others.
Right.
Yeah, strangers coming to others' aids. Instead of running away, people confronted the situation by running towards the bullets and trying to get people out of there.
So you had one coward, but multiple number of heroes.
Absolutely. But we always hear about the killer. If you ask the average person who follows the news, can you name, for example, the Orlando killer? They'd probably go 1 for 1. Then if you ask another question, can you name one murdered victim out of the 49? They'd probably go 0 for 49.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So
Yeah.
we have it all wrong.
Yeah. But most of them didn't have any kind of personal contact with a family member who was killed or injured. If it's somebody that had a relative, but we're such a big country, that's still a very small number of people that were personally affected, even by this largest mass killing in Las Vegas.
I see your point. News media today, if it bleeds, it leads. Ratings,
And
money.
then they move on to something else.
I mean, it's money over humanity. It always seems to be that way, right?
Well, tell me about other projects. We just heard of another one and another one and another one and another one. What kind of things keeps this thread going that makes you want to go investigate another one?
Well, I think after 25 films and doing this for 8 years, it might be time for me to kind of sit back and look at everything that I've done and maybe reanalyze my career and maybe try another type of kind of film. I mean, I love music. Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks. She went to Loretto Academy. She learned how to sing in El Paso. I'd love to do a documentary on her. I mean, she's arguably the greatest star to ever live here at one time. I mean, you can't get bigger than Fleetwood Mac. I always called her Stevie Nicks the original Madonna because she's so diverse, and at 70, she's going strong. So that's one idea. But that's the only one right now. People always ask me, what's your next project? A part of me wants to go to Tijuana because they're averaging 6 murders a day. But I don't know. Should I do something that I don't know. Like I said, I'd have to really kind of rethink everything.
Yeah, well, I interviewed you about your film, 8 Murders a Day, when Juarez had reached that level.
Yeah, 7 years ago.
And then and I had students who were being affected by
Oh.
that. Definitely, some students, their relatives being killed, and their friends and fellow students being killed, husbands being killed. Some of my students in my classes, and I had them write reports on it, and I have those in my files. Someday I'll write about that, but I don't have time to write such an essay or article now. But now it's creeping back up again.
Right.
It went down for several years, and now the violence is creeping up again. You've been in conversation with people in Juarez and Tijuana. Why this is happening?
Yeah, well, I interviewed Armando Cabada, who's the mayor of Juarez, last year for my film about all the missing women, the femicides in Juarez. And by the way, let me just add that this is the 25-year anniversary for all the women disappearing and being kidnapped and murdered in Juarez. It really began in earnest in 1993. So we talked about anniversaries before. Bowling Alley, 28 years. Femicides this year, 25 years. When I asked Armando Cabada why the murder rate's gone up in Juarez, he came right out with it. He said crystal meth. It's a huge problem today, not just in Mexico, but in the United States. There was a lady arrested in Las Cruces recently because they found traces of crystal meth in her children. So it's a big drug out there, and it's also a big problem in El Paso. There's been many busts also in El Paso. So it's all over the borderland. It's a very dangerous drug.
Yeah, I have relatives in East Texas that got into that, and one of my nieces lost all of her children because of that. And then we know others. We have friends or relatives who have adopted children because their mother could not take care of them and lost them because the woman was in crystal meth and things like that.
Yeah, it's a huge drug, and the drug cartels are. The reason why meth is so big right now in Juarez is because the money for marijuana has dried up because of its increased legalization. So the meth money is critical.
I was going to ask you that question, so you beat me to it. But you see some changes because of legalization of marijuana.
Right. Well, we've done 10 shows together, Leon, so I think we can finish each other's sentence by now.
That's probably true. How do you deal with that one? The crystal meth issue, the human interest angle of crystal meth, and how it's affecting the border.
I mean, if I ever did do a film again in Juarez, which I doubt, I think I've done enough in Juarez, but maybe in Tijuana, I'd have to really look at all the roots and what's causing the violence. It's very nebulous, the drug war is, because of the investigations are so poor. You're not exactly sure who's being killed, by who and why.
And some corruption of institutions.
Well, gosh, I mean, widespread corruption is pretty rampant in Mexico on all levels. And this year's election in Mexico will be critical. I mean, we'll know who the next president of Mexico will be in just a few months. And I get this feeling that people in Mexico are fed up with the PRI. It was a tough 6 years with Enrique Peña Nieto. And maybe the PAN will come back in 2018, just like when they took over with Fox in 2000.
Now, you did a movie about the bravest man in Mexico, about a police chief in Juarez. Have you kept up with him? Do you keep up with some of these?
I haven't talked to Julian Lezeola Perez. That's the guy you're talking about. He's actually now a security advisor in Cancun, because Cancun, Quintana Roo is going through a drug war. 2017 was the worst year on record for homicides in Mexico, and it's rising. I mean, the drug war is back. It feels different, though, this time around than it did back in 2008, 9, and 10. I think in 8, 9, and 10 it was more transparent and in your face. It almost feels now in 2018 it's a little bit more hidden. I don't know, it's just the feeling I get. It feels like more of a subtle existence, a subtle war, but the numbers are very disturbing and troubling and alarming. I don't know if Mexico is trying to slide it under the rug, but there's just so much you can do when there's just an overwhelming level of violence. There's just so much you can hide.
Now, you have television people and print journalist people assisting you in many of these projects, and I've met some of them. Is it still very dangerous for journalists in Mexico?
Absolutely. There was a journalist I interviewed in Culiacan, Javier Cardenas, who was murdered about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago. He wrote books about the drug war, about drug cartels, and I guess he wrote one book too many, and he paid a dear price. And I have the utmost respect for these journalists who don't get paid a lot of money, and they're there to inform the curious public on what's going on with all this violence. How do we stay safe? How do we protect ourselves from all this violence? And Javier Cardenas is the latest journalist that's of high visibility to take a bullet.
Also, some of the people that have tried to stay clean and get in public office, because there's a lot of pressure on them to be corrupted, so they will assist in these nefarious actions that are going on. We've had some of these have fled to El Paso to get out of Mexico because their lives were in danger, because they got into politics or journalism.
I mean, we're so close to Mexico. We're 300 feet away. Today I spoke at a class at EPCC Rio Grande, And this one student, very gutsy, I was talking about this one case, and she said, that's my aunt, in front of the whole class. And I was like, wow, that's pretty gutsy just to say that, very open.
I've had that happen in my classes.
Oh, have you?
In the past too, yeah. Some of them say,
Yeah, I mean, we're just so close to Mexico that you don't know. You've taught how many students in your career?
Oh, thousands.
Yeah,
Thousands.
and you don't know who they are right away, and you may never know. So, you know, I do a lot of classroom visits. I've talked to your classes quite a bit, and I always say to myself, whenever I go into a class, you don't know who's listening.
Well, I've been warned sometimes, be careful about how openly you discuss some of these subjects. But you and I are very open about the kind of things we're going to discuss, but we don't want to act stupidly.
Well, I've always said you can't solve a problem unless you talk about it intelligently. And it's up to the individual on what they want to talk about and how far they want to take it.
Okay. You just came from a few classes. Our time is almost gone. What's been the most consistent question you've been asked in your classes when people ask
Have you been threatened?
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Are you scared? I mean, the fear part, I'm past all that. I mean, 8 years, 25 films later, I was never scared, actually.
Yeah, I remember you would show scenes from your movies, and you'd show going into some of these neighborhoods that were rather scary. And the students would ask you that with the classes you came on.
Yeah, I mean, easily the most common question.
Well, our time's about gone, Charlie. Good to have you with us.
Yeah,
again.
Leon, I'm telling you, you're. One day I'd love to interview you.
Okay, let's try that. We'll talk about
We'll switch chairs.
yeah, when I retired from classroom teaching.
Yeah, we miss you at Valle Verde, I'll tell you that. People still talk about you, Leon.
Yeah, well, Roy Ortega, retired journalist here in El Paso, TV journalist, he interviewed me about my retirement. And so maybe we could take a different tack if you interview me sometime.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, glad to have you again. And out there in television land, once again, Charlie Minn, always interesting, always dynamic, always pensive and wondering about what's next. Thank you for watching. I'm Leon Blevins.